I do want to start, though, by sending some regards from former Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin.
Yeah, she's a
And
great lady.
she says, "Tell Johnny, he introduced me graciously when I testified before Senate on municipal infrastructure issues and budget shortfalls. His service to people of Georgia gets high marks from me. Please give him my regards and a virtual hug of thanks."
You give her a big kiss from me.
I will.
Yeah, she's a great lady.
You know, in your farewell address on the Senate floor, which you stood before so many times, and you charged your fellow lawmakers with this. I'm going to quote you here. You said, "Whether you're black or white, Republican or Democrat, whatever it might be, find a way to find common ground. Give it a chance to work. And if it doesn't, be a future friend." That's my slogan. And so, Senator, I ask you this as we begin our conversation. Are you leaving Congress, you think, in a better place than when you found it, when you got there?
I feel like I am. I waited a while, but once I got there to get my feet on the ground before I started pontificating. I've never been a pontificator. I've always been a problem solver to the best I could be. In fact, when I was in the serious minority for years in Georgia, if you couldn't solve a problem, you were worthless, and you didn't get any standing period. So I worked hard to at least get standing and be competitive with my Democratic brothers and sisters and folks like that. But over the years, I made a lot of friends, and I'll just say this: in the last week, I've spoken at Ebenezer Baptist Church at their invitation. I've done stuff in rural Georgia. I've done stuff in Washington, wherever the state needed me to finish the job. I'm trying to finish the job, and I think that's indicative that the job's never finished. But as long as the job's out there to be done, if I can help with it, I'm going to do it.
You said bipartisanship is a state of being, it's a state of mind. And given the current climate in Washington right now, what do you think, how did we get here to this current climate?
We developed a lot of very bad habits that made them worse. What I meant by find a way to find common ground, you can be different with your next door neighbor or your partner in business, but if you believe in the same result happening, it's just how you get there counts. You can get there. You can find ways to trade off and find common ground. If you're just in there because you don't like the other side, and it doesn't matter what they say, they're wrong, and they don't like you, and whatever you say, you're wrong, you'll never solve any problem. You'll never have any agreement. So what I was trying to point out was nothing ever eventually happens, one way or another, good or bad, unless people come together and settle on what they will agree to and save the other stuff for another day. I think I was pretty good at that. I did it on the Delta pension when we solved that with 4 hours to go in federal court before we saved the pension of every airline employee in the country. We did it with a lot of other things where we got to the last minute and we knew it was our way or we were dead, and we found ways to find common ground. Sometimes you have to give in more than you like to, but giving in is not a bad thing if you're giving in to an ultimate goal that's good.
Having served in Georgia's State House, U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, have you had to develop a personal philosophy about serving as an elected official, or has it been the same philosophy and approach from day one?
I really give it the credit to my mother. My father was a great man, but he worked all the time, and she raised me almost. At least the one parent I remember the most is her until I was 20, and then I remember my father after that. But she would make, if somebody in the neighborhood got sick, she'd make a chicken for them at night. If somebody in the neighborhood needed something, she'd do it. If somebody in the neighborhood needed blinds on their house or needed some painting done, she would go do it. She was just a doer to help people out. It kind of embedded in me how important that was, because I would watch people come and thank her for what she'd done for them, people that didn't have much and were in need of it. So my mother really gave me that service mentality, and that service commitment, and that servant's heart. And my father brought about that can do, work as hard as you can, as long as you can, until you get the job done spirit. And I merged those together, and I turned out all right, but it was both of them's credit.
Tell me about your parents and a little bit more in terms of their influence on you.
Well, it was tremendous. My dad had a heart murmur and couldn't go to World War II because when they drafted him, they wouldn't take him. He had a grade 7 heart murmur, so he voluntarily drove a bus from Jacksonville, Florida, and Miami, Florida, to Atlanta.
Greyhound, right?
Greyhound, that's right. Taking all the troops that were going to basic training on the East Coast, up the East Coast, or down to Miami. And he did that for the entire term of the World War II until I was born in 1944. At the end of 1944. My mom did, which is what I told you, she did whatever needed to be done to make the family right, but also anybody around her. She was always helping folks. So those days were very Spartan. When I was born, my family lived on Lucille Avenue in Atlanta, and which was a middle-class neighborhood, and but certainly nothing special, and but special because it was my home, but nothing special from an economic standpoint. My dad worked hard. My mother worked hard. They'd buy a house that was torn up and needed repair, and they'd make the repairs. My mother'd paint it, make curtains for it. They'd sell it and make $500 and take that and put it in another house and go on and on and on. That's the way they built whatever they had. So they were a great lesson to me. And you work hard, do what's right, make something somebody would want to have, then you can go places. And I tried to do that.
You've seen a lot of changes in Atlanta and around Atlanta. You've seen segregation go away. I wanted for a moment talk about race relations and sort of your approach as an elected official. And, after President Obama was elected, we were told we were post-racial, that we were in this post-racial society. How do you view that? Do you think that was true?
Well, we made a turn. We didn't turn immediately, but we made a turn.
Where do you think we are now in this country in terms of race relations? Is it tense field?
Is it what?
Is it tense field? Is there a tension in this nation as it relates to race?
I think there is. Barack's election was a turning point for the country, but not in the way a lot of people think. It wasn't a turning point because a black person got elected. We'd done enough of that, not for president, but in other offices where it happened. But it was a turning point because all of a sudden we have a leader who was an African American, who was talking about the average problems of American citizens, the average challenges of the president of the United States. And he and Michelle are a great couple. They're good friends of mine, and they did a great job.
I want to turn to some specific legislation, particularly as you were chair of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. You've worked so hard for our nation's veterans. I think you've passed dozens.
57.
Yeah, of bills. But as you leave Washington, D.C., what concerns do you still have about our nation's veterans and the services that not only they need, but that they deserve?
Well, it's a work in progress, and it's always going to be. I tell everybody, my job was not a conclusion. My job was a platform for the future. There's a difference. Conclusion senses that you're ending something. Mm-hmm. Taking care of veterans is never going to end. In fact, we're going to produce more veterans in the next 10 years than we did in the last 10 years, even with Afghanistan and Iraq. And what we treat them for is going to be different. We didn't know what PTSD was. We didn't know what the loss of a limb was. We didn't know what a lot of the things we now correct daily. 90% of the veterans who survived today died in World War II with the same injury. So we're saving most of our veterans who get injured. But the problem with that is, that's not a problem. That's something we take joy in. But we're saving them for a lifetime, not just a minute. And that's a lot of cost, and we're going to have to pay for that, and we're going to have to do it, and we're going to have to do it right. So we're going to have some challenges ahead, there's no doubt about it.
Is there any piece of legislation that you regret that you all couldn't get done?
Well, I guess politicians always have a regret, but I'm so proud of what we did get done. I don't want to talk about something that we didn't do. We did the Blue Water Navy, the mission bill, the caregiver bill. If you just listen to Patty Murray's speech the last day we were there, she said it better than I could have ever said it. She said, I never thought this committee would ever do those things. And what made us do it is the chairman was willing to let it be bipartisan, and we were really to make it be bipartisan. So we started fighting as Americans, not as partisan Americans. And that's true. I mean, Bernie Sanders, Patty Murray, Tom Tillis, I'm thinking my smart testing people. Everybody who was a tester who wanted to keep things from happening came into line. We worked together and we passed just about everything we needed to pass. So I don't have a regret at all. And I know that we didn't finish the job, but we never will finish the job. There'll be a new disease. There'll be a new something that becomes certified as a cause of disease, like Blue Water Navy, what we did with the Agent Orange stuff. So there's always going to be something new that you're going to have to meet financially. But we got a lot of veterans coming in. They're going to have a lot more coming in. But we'll be able to take care of them.
Your fellow lawmakers, so many of them remarked on your political career, and your friend, Congressman John Lewis, he called you a friend and a brother.
That's right.
Tell me about your relationship with John over the years.
Well, he was in the streets of Atlanta as leader of the Southern
Christian Leadership. Yeah. SNCC.
That's head of SNCC. I always hated that. And told him, I said, John, you can think of a better name than that. The Southern Nonviolent
Coordinating Committee, I believe. Yeah.
And he was in the streets doing that. And I was in the streets watching my neighbors be bused to schools because integration was ended when the Supreme Court decided we're going to be satisfied with numbers if they indicate a opportunity for African Americans, and if they indicate the fact that schools are becoming more equitable in race and access to race. So I think back with some degree of humor now that 7 white students out of 250 in R.L. Hope Elementary in Atlanta is called integration.
Mm-hmm.
That's an accident,
Mm-hmm.
but today. But then it was amazing. I mean, that's an elementary school I happened to go to, and I remember the federal troops that were ready to go out there, but never had, unlike in Alabama and Arkansas, and we never had federal troops in Atlanta escorting them in. We had them all over the place to be ready if they needed them, but Atlanta was a great city because of Andy Young, because of Martin Luther King, because of unsung hero of Ivan Allen and the others. Ivan Allen, who got on the rooftop in Somerville of a police car and grabbed the bullhorn and said, Atlanta is not going to burn. And we were the only city that night that wasn't set on fire. So there are a lot of, sad as it was, there are a lot of good stories that came out of it in that time. So, but it's just John's relationship and mine. I think the first time we ever met probably was at some student involvement meeting where people about our age, John's a little older than I am, as I remind him often, but not much older. He was born in 40 and I was born in 44, so 4 years difference. But I remember meeting him and remember going to Pascal's, which is where all the black community, African American community met back in those days, and doing those type of things. And then when I got elected to Congress, he introduced me to the Congress when I was sworn in, and he and I have done so many things in the last 20 years that people don't really know about, because we didn't go around bragging about them. We knew if we could do them and get them done, we'd be better off than talking about it. So we decided not to talk about it so nobody else would know what to talk about. And we solved some problems that somehow somebody with a little less, more of a heart would not have done, or less of a heart would not have done. But John was great. In fact, I took John to dinner with 2 of my friends from New Hampshire about a month ago at the War Horse. Do you know where the War Horse is? I said, that'll be a good place. John said, where do you want to go? I said, we'll go to the War House. He said, I've never been to the War House. I said, well, you got to stop going to Campbell's, to the Pascal so much and go with me down to the War Horse. And Diane and I took him to the War Horse, and he told stories about the civil rights years for 2.5 hours, and just had the best time. And we've helped each other when only we could help each other, but we didn't need to take credit for it because that would have hurt us from doing it. And we were pretty successful most of the time.
You mentioned Diane. Let's talk about how important she's been throughout your political career.
Well, I couldn't have done it without her.
Yeah.
Not because it's what she didn't do, not what she did do. She didn't reject, living with a guy who was going to be gone until midnight half the week and be out of town half the week and doing all the things I've done over the last, 20. Well, marriage to her has been 52 years. Most of those 52 years, I was doing something at night that was civic-oriented, or served in elected office for 45 of those years, so that's pretty much enough. And she tolerated all of it. There were times I knew I was taking advantage of her patience. There were times I knew she'd rather me not be doing what I was doing, but there were times that she also knew I was supporting her in things that I couldn't do. She's a great artist and did things with the arts that I could have never done. She's a great mom and a great neighbor and a great friend and a special friend. And we're getting to know how it is to live together again after we're practicing getting back together with nothing else to do. I don't know how we're going to do it. We're going to try.
Now, you need to stay out of her way. You know that, right?
Listen, I can't get in her way. I'm slow. Parkinson's has slowed me down a little bit, but she's fast anyway. I'm proud to say that she has the best time for any woman over 70 in Georgia in the 10K.
Yeah.
She's a fast runner and a good runner.
Well, you're talking to an old track and field, washed-up athlete here, so I can definitely appreciate that.
We're washed up to be.
Senator, what do you want Georgians to know about your commitment to serving on behalf of the state?
Just tell them that when I ran for office for the first time, everybody told me I was crazy because I ran as a Republican. And when I got elected to office, I was the only Republican in the state to beat a Democratic incumbent. But I tried to run and earn the confidence of the people, and then as I served, I tried to do what they wanted so they would want to send me back. Now, I didn't ever set a goal to get in office for 45 years. If somebody said you're going to do that, I said, no, I'll never do that. But one thing happened. Everybody who beat me ended up choosing me to replace themselves. Zell Miller beat me for governor and then turned around. He left the Senate and I replaced him. And Newt never thought I was worth much for a long period of time. So when I replaced him when he left the house. So if you really look at it, my people that you would have thought I had a bad relationship with, I ended up having a great relationship.
Yeah.
Newt, I had a great relationship, and so too was Elle, because I just always tried to find that common ground and look the other way at the past. You can't change the past. And one thing I think, good evidence of, you can change the future. You can make a change in the future if you try. And sometimes little changes become great big changes, but you got to make them first, and they're hard.
And finally, what will you miss about Washington, D.C.?
I like everything I do. I've got a little bit of historian in me, so working in a place like the Capitol is just, for me, a trip and really a great thing to do. I love people, and you never lack for people who need help. Most of them justifiably, but even some who don't, just trying to get you to bail them out. But that's what you're there to do, is to help them. And I love my state and my city. I've become friends with just about everybody I've dealt with in the city for the many years I've been here, and become good friends with leaders like Andy Young, and leaders like John Lewis, and leaders like Ivan Allen, and leaders like others that have been elected in the city, and not only just the city government, but the ARC and all those type of things. I've just enjoyed working on, and Shirley, she saved our water.
Yeah.
You really look at our leaders; they've all saved something. They saved our water, and Kasim saved us a few things. Everybody saved us something, and that's what public service is about: saving things that are worth saving and making them better.
One of those elected officials that you mentioned, and I'll honor their remaining anonymous, but said to me, Rose, if someone worries about their legacy, they don't have one.
Yeah.
But do you think about your legacy?
I don't need one. Yeah. People. The one reason my name on my bumper sticker was just Johnny, because everybody knew who that was. I didn't have to tell them where Isakson was the other one. And so that's all I worry about. Once people know who you are and what you're doing, that's all. I don't need a legacy or a statue or a sports event or anything like that, or a book. I don't have a book in me. I'm not a good writer, but I do have a lot of love in me, and I'm happy to work with somebody who loves the city and loves public life and loves America and helping to make it a better place. That's the one good thing about being like me and having a little bit of an affliction and going in my senior years. I've got a few things I can't do. I got a lot of things I can do now. I'll have more time to do, and I'll take them. But all of them will involve taking care of the state I love and the people I love.
Senator Johnny Isakson, thank you so much for always taking the time, being so gracious with your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rose.
Best wishes.
You too, darling.
Merry
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Woof.